Most people use spreadsheets to manage boring problems. I used mine to solve a much bigger one. I wasn't born a monster. I didn't grow up wanting to burn the world down. Back then, I was just a guy with a fresh degree in international logistics and a very specific, somewhat boring talent. I noticed the details that everyone else ignored. I saw patterns in numbers where others saw chaos. But in the world of international shadow logistics, I learned very quickly that a single cell in Excel, if manipulated correctly, can be significantly more dangerous than a loaded gun. I graduated at the top of my class, fluent in 3 languages: English, Russian, and French. To most people, logistics is invisible. It's the truck passing you on the highway. It's the container ship on the horizon. To me, it was art. I landed a job at a medium-sized firm in a gray, industrial port city. For the first few years, I was a model employee. I moved rice to Sudan to feed the hungry. I shipped medical supplies to Somalia to treat the sick. I coordinated the delivery of heavy construction equipment to Syria to build infrastructure. I was good at it. Specifically, I was good at getting things from point A to point B when point B was a place that didn't exist on most tourist maps, places torn apart by conflict, places nobody wanted to go. But as I climbed the ladder, I began to see the cracks in the system. I realized that the real game in international trade isn't about the physical cargo sitting in the container. It is entirely, 100%, about the paperwork, the stamps, the signatures, the customs declarations. That is where the power lies. The shift from legitimate businessman to international criminal didn't happen in a dark alley. It happened under the crystal chandeliers of a hotel lobby bar in Dubai, 3 years into my career. Dubai is the crossroads of the world, a place where money washes away sins. A man sat down next to me. He looked proper, radiating old money and influence. He ordered a drink and started talking. He didn't want a soldier. He didn't want a mercenary. He told me his client needed farming tools delivered to a rebel group deep in the Congo. He laid out the problem with the precision of an engineer. The government had blocked all the main roads. The rivers were patrolled. The only way in was by air, landing on a terrifyingly short dirt runway carved out of the jungle. He looked at me and said, "We need a logistics manager. We need you." Then came the offer. The payout was 5 times my annual salary, in cash, up front. I looked at the money. I looked at my spreadsheet, and I realized I could solve this puzzle. By saving the day for them, I officially violated international laws for the first time. I didn't feel guilty. I felt efficient. I left my firm immediately. I went freelance. To operate in the shadows, you need to be a ghost. I started setting up shell companies in jurisdictions that treat privacy like a religion: Panama, Cyprus, the Cayman Islands. These weren't real businesses with offices and water coolers. They were simply mailboxes, brass plaques on a wall. But they gave me the legitimacy I needed to manipulate the most important document in the underworld. There's a piece of paper in international trade that matters more than the cargo itself. To governments, it means legitimacy. To people like me, it meant permission. So, I would fly to Nigeria. I would meet with a local general. With a few envelopes of cash, bribes were just a line item on my expense report. I would get a legitimate, official stamp on that certificate. Now, the factory in Europe is happy. The government is happy. The paperwork says Nigeria. But once the paperwork was accepted, reality became flexible. After that point, no one with authority was watching anymore. It lands in a war zone in Sierra Leone, or a rebel stronghold in the Congo. The guns disappear into the jungle, and nobody, absolutely nobody, checks the paperwork after the plane leaves the ground. Renting space on other people's planes became too risky. Too many questions. I needed total control. I bought an aircraft that no respectable airline would touch anymore. Cheap enough to lose, useful enough to kill for. To put that in perspective, that's the price of a mid-range SUV. It was a flying piece of junk, smelling of oil and rust, but to me, it was beautiful. It was worth 10 times that amount if it was working for me. But a plane needs a pilot. I found a man named Sergey. Sergey was a stereotype come to life. He drank vodka for breakfast, smoked unfiltered cigarettes in the cockpit, and didn't speak a word of English. But Sergey had a talent that no commercial pilot possessed. He could land a 40-ton aircraft on a strip of dirt in pitch-black darkness without breaking a sweat. We became a full-service delivery machine. I took contracts for private security firms. Every shipment had two versions. One for the people who signed the forms, another for the people waiting on the ground. But if you pried open those crates, you wouldn't find blankets. You'd find surface-to-air missiles, crates of ammunition, and landmines. We flew at night, always at night. We flew low, skimming the tops of the trees, feeling the turbulence of the heat rising from the jungle, just to stay under the radar coverage. I remember one specific night. It was 3 a.m. We touched down on a strip of grass in the middle of the jungle. The darkness was absolute until the cargo door opened. I stood in the doorway, the humidity hitting me like a physical wall. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of burning trash, high-octane jet fuel, and jungle rot. Below me, on the grass, men emerged from the shadows. They wore red berets and carried machetes. They didn't look like the security guards my client had described. They looked like a militia. They looked like death. My buyer walked up the ramp. He was wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night, a sign of a man who doesn't want to be seen, or perhaps just a man who wants to look dangerous. He didn't have a bank account. Wire transfers leave a trail. Instead, he handed me a heavy, canvas duffel bag. I opened it. It wasn't cash. It was gold dust. Heavy, yellow packets of raw gold, likely mined by prisoners of war in some muddy pit just a few miles away. I pulled out my handheld scale, weighed it right there on the ramp. It checked out. I signaled my crew. They started kicking the crates down the ramp. Go, go, go! I screamed over the roar of the engines. We had to be in the air before the sun came up. We had to be gone before the satellites passed overhead. It was in those moments, watching the jungle fade away beneath me, that I realized the truth. I wasn't just a delivery driver anymore. I was the enabler. I was the reason these wars could happen. Without me, the guns stay in Europe. Without me, the rebels have to fight with rocks. That feeling, that power, it was intoxicating. It was better than the money. I started taking riskier jobs. I moved radar systems to the Middle East, labeling them as medical scanning equipment for hospitals. I moved disassembled attack helicopters to South America, labeling the parts as spare auto parts. I learned that corruption is the universal language. Every official has a price. For a junior customs officer, a $500 bribe or a nice watch is enough. For a port director, you pay for his son's college tuition in America. You pay it gladly. It's just a line item. It's just the cost of doing business. I met the buyers. They weren't the drooling monsters you see in movies. They were often charismatic, educated men. They would quote philosophy and talk about freedom while their child soldiers loaded my crates onto trucks. They called me the magician. They said, "You bring the rain." And the rain kept falling. I moved from rifles to the heavy stuff. Tanks hidden under tarps labeled industrial bulldozers, surface-to-air missiles, artillery. My life became a movie. I bought a penthouse in Monaco overlooking the Mediterranean. I kept a go bag under my bed at all times containing $500,000 in loose diamonds and 4 passports with different names. I managed a vast network of pilots, fixers, and officials, ensuring silence was maintained. I justified the violence to myself every single day. I told myself, I just provide the tools. If they wanted to kill each other with rocks, they would. I just make it more efficient. But the end didn't come with an explosion. It started small. A single shipment got flagged. And then, I got caught. Not by the police, by someone much scarier. I was summoned to a meeting in Vienna, a quiet room in an embassy. The man sitting across from me looked like a university professor tweed jacket, glasses, soft-spoken. But he was CIA. He put a file on the table. They knew everything, every flight to Yemen, every bribe in Nigeria. I thought I was going to prison forever. But then he smiled. "We don't want to arrest you," he said. "We want to hire you." You see, governments have a problem. They can't be seen sending missiles to an insurgency they secretly support. It looks bad on CNN. They need a middleman. They need a ghost. They need me. I became an expert in state-sanctioned smuggling. The Pentagon would wire money to my shell companies. I would use that money to buy old Soviet weapons from stockpiles in Albania. My planes would fly them to a training exercise in Jordan, where the weapons would accidentally fall off a truck and cross the border into a war zone. I was working for the good guys now, but I was a prisoner to paranoia. I checked the undercarriage of my car for bombs every single morning. I changed my burner phone every week. I never sat in a restaurant with my back to the door. The nightmares started. The faces of the people I had armed. I drank heavily, expensive scotch, but it couldn't wash the memories away. In this world, you are only useful as long as the politics align. One day, I miscalculated. I sold a shipment to the wrong side just as a peace treaty was being signed. My CIA handler sent me a message. I was now an expensive loose end. A new administration in Washington wanted to look tough on crime. They needed a trophy. They needed a villain to parade in front of the cameras. I was the biggest liability of all because I was the only one who could connect the government to the guns. I was at an airport in Thailand when it happened. I heard the screaming first. Then, men in black tactical gear swarmed the lobby. They slammed me to the ground. The chaos was deafening. The news anchors had a field day. They called me a monster. They called me the merchant of death. They claimed I fueled genocides. They conveniently forgot to mention that for the last decade, their own governments were my biggest clients. My life ended not in a blaze of glory, but in silence. I retired to a cell the size of my old bathroom. I spend my weeks staring at the concrete walls. Sometimes, I wish I was back in that boring cubicle at my first job, worrying about rice shipments to Sudan. I paid my debt to a world that needed someone to do its dirty work. The nightmares have finally stopped. I was just a number for the war machine. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll be traded in a prisoner swap 10 years from now. But probably not. A life spent making other people's wars possible, that's the real cost of doing business.